If you have any questions during the reading, you can just put it in the chat box. And when we pause, we will take those questions. And if you want to volunteer to read, you can unmute and start reading, or you can just raise your hand. Then
If you have any questions.
Krishna saves his devotees. As Krishna is preparing to depart for Dwarka, Ashwatthama releases 6 Brahmastra weapons to destroy the Pandavas and their unborn grandchild. Krishna personally saves them. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Queen Kunti, the Pandavas' mother, offers him prayers. Yudhishthira then convinces Krishna to stay longer in Hastinapur. Seated on a covered palanquin, the royal ladies headed by Queen Kunti, Gandhari, and Draupadi led the funeral procession to the Ganges, where the deceased last rites would be performed. With their disheveled hair hanging loose and their eyes red from weeping, they beat their breasts and wailed in sorrow, calling out the names of their slain husbands, sons, and fathers. Hearing those pitiful cries, people thought the time of universal destruction had arrived. The Pandavas, with Yudhishthira at their head, followed in chariots, along with Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya. Krishna rode with Arjuna. Numerous sages, headed by Daumya and Narada, walked alongside the procession, reciting sacred chants. Arriving at the river, they offered sacraments for their fallen soldiers. When the ceremonies were complete and the Pandavas had taken their ritual bath in the Ganges, Krishna and the sages consoled them by explaining the transcendental wisdom of the Vedas. Krishna said, "Do not lament. All these heroes have attained higher regions of enduring happiness. None in this world can avoid death. And for a warrior, there is no better way to die than at the edge of weapons." We're talking here about the Upa-Pandavas who've been slain by Ashwatthama, for those of you who were not here yesterday. The children of Pandavas have been killed by Ashwatthama when they were sleeping. And now they are proceeding with their funeral rites of the children of the Pandavas. A few days later, Krishna met privately with the 5 Pandavas and Draupadi. "My dear Yudhishthira," he said, "I'm pleased to see you again ruling as the emperor of the world." With a sorrowful heart, Yudhishthira replied, "We have all paid heavily from my ambition." Krishna consolingly put his arm on Yudhishthira's shoulder. "You're not to blame for these warriors' deaths." Turning to Draupadi, he continued, "They condemned themselves to death on that fateful day when they insulted this chaste lady." Seeing Yudhishthira still morose, Krishna added, "Nevertheless, if you fear the sin of killing your relatives, you can perform 3 horse sacrifices." Embracing the brothers and offering Draupadi blessings, Krishna then left to see the sages headed by Vyasadeva before departing for Dwaraka. Later that day, the Lord ascended his chariot, accompanied by Satyaki and Uddhava. The 5 Pandavas, along with the women and their families, stood next to it. Suddenly, 6 fiery Brahmastra missiles descended on the party. one headed for each of the Pandava, who hurriedly drew their swords in the futile gesture of self-defense. The sixth missile targeted Uttara, who was at the time heavily pregnant with Arjuna's grandchild. In great terror, Uttara at once called out to Krishna, "O Supreme Lord, Master of the universe, if you desire my death, I do not mind, but please save my embryo." Seeing the danger facing his devotees, Krishna released his Sudarshan disc to protect the 5 brothers. Simultaneously, as a super soul in the heart, he personally covered Uttara's embryo, shielding both the unborn child and his young mother from the devastating effect of the Brahmastra. When the dreadful glare of the weapons subsided, Uttara collapsed in a faint. Draupadi, Kunti, and the 5 Pandava brothers hastily gathered around her, fearing that she and her child had been killed. Relieved to see symptoms of life, they looked up at Krishna in bewilderment. What had just happened? Krishna assured them, "This was the work of Ashwatthama, intending to destroy your lineage. Do not worry, Uttara will soon recover and her child is unharmed. As for Ashwatthama, he has exhausted the last of his power and does not pose any further threat." Shaken by the unexpected attack, the elderly Kunti slowly rose from Uttara's side and unsteadily approached the Lord. Folding her hands and with tears of love streaming from her eyes, Kunti knelt beside the chariot on which Krishna stood and lowered her head to the ground to offer obeisance. With a look of alarm on his face, Krishna jumped down from his chariot and gently raised her. "Aunt Kunti, what are you doing? There is no need for you to show me such respect. You are my superior." Kunti spoke in a choked voice. "My dear Krishna, I offer my respects to you because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world." "My dear aunt," objected Krishna, "I am simply your nephew." Kunti shook her head. "You're the invisible supersoul of all existence, residing within and without. Though you control everything, ignorant people do not understand this. Just as a child does not see the puppeteer moving puppets, even the liberated sages find it hard to perfectly know you. So what to speak of a simple woman like me?" Aunt and nephew stood looking tenderly at one another as Kunti continued. "Though you are the original Supreme Lord, you have come as the son of my brother Vasudeva, giving joy to his wife Devaki. The cowherd Nanda and his wife Yashoda are even more blessed because they raised you and were able to relish your pastoral pastimes in Vrindavan." Kunti stroked Krishna's face with a motherly affection. "I offer my respectful obeisances to you, dear Lord, whose eyes resemble lotus petals, who are always decorated with a lotus garland, whose navel resembles a lotus flower, and whose feet are marked with lotuses." Kunti again knelt and placed her head at Krishna's feet. But Krishna once more lifted her and she went on speaking. "You rescued your own mother only once when you released her from Kamsa's prison. You've shown me, your widowed aunt, even more mercy, for you have saved me and my sons repeatedly from a series of dangers." Remembering the many threats she had faced and how the Lord had always rescued her, Kunti wept. "You protected Bhima from a certain death when the evil-minded Duryodhana fed him poisoned food. Then by your grace alone we survived Duryodhana's plot to burn us to death in our sleep." Kunti shuddered as she remembered that fearful night in Varanavrat, how after escaping from blazing house they raced through the dark and perilous forest in fear of their lives. "Without your protection, how could we have survived the attacks of the fearsome cannibals Baka and Hidimba? and other hardships we faced while living in the wilderness. Then came the battle. Duryodhana's army was far superior to ours. His generals were unconquerable. Yet, thanks to you, my sons emerged victorious. And now you have miraculously saved us yet again from Ashwatthama's deadly Brahmastra missiles. I will pause here. I'd just like you to think of this attitude of gratitude of a devotee. Kunti Devi has just lost her grandsons. They were all dead because Ashwatthama beheaded them in sleep. And yet, she's grateful to the Lord for saving. This is the heart of a devotee. We count what Krishna has done for us, and we have faith that whatever is happening is the will of the Lord, and the Lord will protect us. I am finding it so hard to see how Kunti is still focused on the positives. She's not even bringing up about the Upa-Pandavas being dead. Okay, anybody likes to take over the reading from here?
I can read, Mataji.
From here, you and your sons are now safe.
You and your sons are now safe. Krishna reassured her. Your trials are over. I do not mind any of the difficulties we have endured. Indeed, I wish all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For by seeing you, we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. Kunti continued in earnest tones. O Krishna, a distressed person sincerely turns to you, thinking he has no other shelter. The materially successful, however proud of their wealth, learning, or social position, cannot feelingly call out to you. Therefore, out of kindness, you put your devotee in difficulty, for only those who approach you in a mood of total dependence can attract your full mercy. Folding her hands and bowing her head, Kunti said, I offer you my respects. You give yourself to those devotees who love you without material motive. You have nothing to do with those interested in worldly gain. But you are so kind to your servants that you forgive them even if they inadvertently offend you. You will even fulfill the desire of devotees who seek liberation. In your form as eternal time, you always destroy those who offend your devotees. You are the original supreme controller, without beginning or end. Existing everywhere, you are equal to all, giving everyone the results of their own acts. I have many detractors who would disagree with you. My dear aunt, said Krishna with a smile. Kunti shook her head, saddened by people's ignorance. No one can truly understand your human like pastimes as much as they try. Certainly, you neither favor nor envy anyone, and only in ignorance do people think otherwise. Kunti wiped her tears with the end of her sari as she went speaking. O soul of the universe, why should anyone expect to perfectly understand you? You never take a material birth nor engage in material acts. Yet you repeatedly appear in different forms and act in so many ways. Truly, this is hard to understand. I am simply bewildered when I think how your mother Yashoda bound you with rope when you misbehaved. Although fear personified fears you, seeing Yashoda angry, you were afraid. Tears folded your eyes. smearing your black mascara. Kunti shook her head in amazement. I have heard sages discuss your activities. Some argue that you came to establish Yudhishthira as the emperor. Others say you appeared in the Yadu dynasty to glorify your devotee King Yadu. Still others say you come because Vasudeva and Devki prayed for you to deliver them, and your other devotees from the vicious and atheistic miscreants. While some sages say you come to save the world on Lord Brahma's request, I have also heard it said the real reason you have come to enact so many mystifying pastimes is to inspire people to hear and talk about you. One attracted to such discussions gains immediate relief from suffering arising from past misdeeds. Even the very sinful can attain pure love for you by regularly discussing your glories. Indeed, those who take pleasure in narrations of your transcendental activities will certainly see your lotus like feet, which alone can free one from the cycle of birth and death. Kunti began to tremble with ecstatic emotion as she swayed back and forth. Krishna placed an arm around her to steady her. He called to the royal attendants, quickly bring water. Sipping cool water from a silver cup, Kunti gradually regained her composure. Krishna embraced his aunt and then, touching her feet, asked permission to depart. I have been here for many months, and I am receiving messages from my father that I am needed back in Dwarka. He explained. Kunti became agitated. Dear Krishna, please do not go. Whatever you need to do in Dwarka, you can accomplish merely by your desire. Why do you wish to leave us? Why so, who so completely dependent on you? You know my sons have created many enemies after the war. You are our only shelter. My dear aunt, replied Krishna soothingly, you have no need to fear. Yudhishthira is protected by his virtue. You and other sons are also powerful, and we Yadus are your stalwart political allies. Kunti again shook her head. As the senses have no power when the soul leaves the body, similarly, neither my sons nor the Yadus have any power when you are not with us. She clutched Krishna's hands in her own and pleaded, my lord, please do not go. Only because your footprints mark this land does it appear beautiful. When you leave, it will no longer be so. This thriving earth, filled with herbs, fruit laden trees, forests, mountains, and rivers, only prospers because of your glance. Kunti's mind drifted to thoughts of her brother Vasudeva and his wife Devaki. Surely they must be suffering in Krishna's absence. Maybe he should go to them, but if Krishna left, what would happen to her sons? O Krishna, because of my dual attachment to both the Pandavas and the Yadavas, I am feeling torn. Please sever my material affections. O Lord of the Madhu dynasty, just as Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, please let my attraction be constantly drawn to you alone. Kunti sank to her knees with her hands clasped. O Krishna, friend of Arjuna, best of the Yadavas, destroyer of the vicious kings, lord of undiminished strength, protector of cows, Brahmins, and devotees, master of yogic powers, Guru of all, O Almighty God, I offer my humble obeisance. Krishna bent over and gently helped his aunt to rise. Wiping away her tears, he assured her that her desire would be fulfilled and her attraction would never waver from him. Then he turned to address Yudhishthira. O king, before I leave, I must bid farewell to other ladies in the. So I think Mataji is some other Mataji is ready to read now. Next.
Oh, thank you. I can't read the chat while screen is on. Sure.
Hare Krishna.
Please go ahead.
Draupadi and Subhadra had gone into the palace to tend to Uttara, who was still weak from her ordeal. Krishna, Yudhishthira, Kunti, Satiki, and Uddhava walked back to the palace, followed by other Pandavas. The Lord entered the women's quarters to inquire after Uttara and found her in bed, surrounded by anxious female relatives and friends. The Lord said to them, "Do not fear for Uttara or her child. They will both be fine. Indeed, Uttara will give birth to a son who will grow up to be a great monarch." After exchanging affectionate words with Uttara, Draupadi, and Subhadra, he tenderly bid them farewell. He then left, followed by the Pandavas, Satyaki, and Uddhava, turning to Yudhishthira and said, O king, my relatives in Dwaraka want me to return. Please allow me to depart." Yudhishthira's face contorted into a mask of pain. Placing a hand on Krishna's arm, he said, "Surely you will return to Dwaraka if it is your will. But how will I survive without your guidance?" In doleful tones, Yudhishthira confided his fears. Ashwadama's recent attack had highlighted the extent of enmity the war had created. There would be much more to do, much more to do to strengthen alliances and to ensure the millions of widows and orphans were all protected. The road ahead seemed overwhelming. Krishna encouraged him. "My dear Yudhishthira, the time has come. You must now accept the throne." Overcome by emotion, Yudhishthira shook his head. "Surely I am unfit to rule the world. How can I lead anyone? I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, so full of ignorance, just to further the interests of my own body, which is fit to be eaten by jackals. I have killed legions of family and friends. For my sake, boys, Brahmins, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers have perished. I shall have to suffer in hell for millions of years for my sins." Yudhishthira turned to Bhima and said, "Brother, take the throne. I shall go to the forest to perform penance." Bhima looked shocked. "My lord, this can never be. How can I rule in your place? Do not censure yourself so. You are a great warrior and leader. You have done your duty. Now accept the throne and rule over this wide earth." Yudhishthira said nothing. Arjuna came up to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "How have you spoken such words, dear brother? After conquering your enemies, you are now the world's rightful ruler. As a Kshatriya, it is your duty to protect the people. It is not time for you to renounce. Kings like you must perform sacrifice and then distribute wealth to those in need. In this way, pious monarchs increase their virtue and fame. The world stands in need of a leader. Following in the footsteps of great kings in our line, we should become emperor of the earth. How could you accept any other path?" Yudhishthira signed. "There is no sin for a king who kills enemies who attack his people." Duryodhana, however, posed no threat to their citizens. "I have killed him and his supporters only out of greed for the kingdom." Nakula said, "My lord, by performing your kingly duties, you can absolve yourself of any sin you may have incurred." Yudhishthira lowered his head. "No amount of material welfare work can counteract the suffering I have caused by this war. Sadeva also tried to convince the king. By performing horse sacrifices, as Krishna suggested, you can purify yourself, my lord. Yudhishthira looked around at his brothers, who were all gazing anxiously at him. He spoke in a low, anguished voice. Just as one cannot purify muddy water by straining it through mud, nor a wine stained pot by washing it with wine, similarly, it is not possible to counteract the killing of men by sacrificing animals. Krishna said, Yudhishthira, your brothers have sacrificed much to win your kingdom back. You cannot desert them now. They and the people need you. Do not shy away from your duty. I think someone can read now.
We can stop here for today. It's 30 minutes past already. And let's meditate on some of these beautiful prayers of Queen Kunti, looking at the circumstance under which the Pandavas were, the way Kunti Devi is taking shelter of the Lord. And I especially want us to meditate on this Kunti Devi's prayer about allowing our thoughts to flow towards Krishna. I'm trying to find that. So you see, can you hear? Where is it?
Previous page. Kunti spoke in a choked voice.
See, we will always be faced by adversities in life. And in those adversities, we can either empower our problem by focusing on it, by blaming others, by feeling guilty, by feeling ashamed, by reducing our sense of dignity and bowing down and expecting abusers or people who are just fragile human beings to give us that validation we seek, that protection that we seek. Or we can realize that all these human beings put in our lives due to some karmic situations, karmic debts that we have to pay back to them. They are all there sometimes, or oftentimes, disappointing us, hurting us. And we weep, we cry, we enter into this world of sorrow and loss. So at that time, what does it mean to take shelter of Krishna? First thing is, any human being, when we approach somebody and we want something from them, we don't just go and ask, please give me this. We start to glorify that person. So the first thing is to acknowledge Krishna's kindness, Krishna's beauty, and to remember every time Krishna has saved us, just like Kunti Devi is doing here. She's remembering how Krishna saved them from that fearful night in Varanavata. And she's remembering how Bhima was saved. She's remembering how Krishna helped in the war that just happened. And no, what surprises me is how she does not bring up about the Upa Pandavas being killed at all. She's going on and on about all the things that she's grateful for. And here she's saying, I do not mind any of these difficulties. She's hoping the calamities will happen again and again, so we can see you again and again. For seeing the Lord, we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. What does it mean to us? It means that no matter if we're in a happy circumstance or a sad circumstance or a miserable circumstance, if Krishna is with us, then we can be rest assured that the same mentality, the same character defect will not be repeated. Self-will is what causes us to suffer again and again. We keep trying to enjoy in different ways. This time, I'll do it differently and maybe I'll find that protection I'm looking for. No, as Kunti Devi here says, with your kindness, you're putting your devotee in difficulty. And those who approach you in a mood of total dependence can attract your full mercy. So let us see our difficulties as an opportunity Krishna is giving us this chance to not depend on the mere mortals. When our thoughts turn towards our difficulty, do we become materially motivated? Or do we go after Krishna? That's the test for us. So let us pray to Krishna to remove, as Kunti Devi says, to sever the material attachments, to sever those material attachments and to allow our thoughts to flow towards the Lord, just as the Ganges river is flowing towards the ocean. So may our mind in any circumstance with gratitude flow towards the Lord. The sadness of this world, may it release us, sever us from these connections that are causing us this pain. May we focus on the Supreme Lord, who is our eternal soothing shelter. And let the agitation be gone. And let's take shelter of the holy name. Every time we feel sad or disappointed, let's pick up that bead bag and chant and connect, because Krishna is a person. The holy name is Nam Prabhu. The holy name is Krishna personified. So let's take shelter of the Lord. Nobody in this world can give us that security, that validation, that protection. They're all substitutes. So being inspired by this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam and the example of Kunti Devi and Draupadi and the Pandavas, let's hand over our emotions of guilt, of shame, of anger, of disappointment, of gratitude, happiness, joy, hopes at the lotus feet of the Lord. And may the Lord change us. May the Lord remove all our character defects and give us the strength to do His will, to give us that ability to think about Him in all circumstances. So taking a deep breath, absorbing this beautiful section of Srimad Bhagavatam, meditating on the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, thinking of the teachings of Queen Kunti. Let us look at our lives from a different perspective. Let us do this exercise today. Just like Kunti, let's make a list of all things we are grateful for. My dear Lord, thank you for your protection. Please show me your hand in what is your plan for my life? Please give us the strength to do your will. May your will and not ours be done. With this thought, I'd like to open this meeting for affirmations. We can do our daily affirmation, whatever it is that you would like. What is your prayer after this reading? What's your affirmation? What would you like to own? I can start. My affirmation for today is, may I not settle for crumbs. May I not run after supplements and temporary shelters. May I realize that the Lord has the best plan for me. And may I prioritize the Lord in all my actions. And let my thoughts flow towards the Lord. Whatever the emotion is, may I be given the strength to take shelter of the Lord. And may the Lord empower me to do His will. I want to be an instrument of His love and of His grace and kindness. I'm yours, Krishna. Please give me the strength to do your will. You can unmute and share your affirmation, or you can just type it in the chat box and we will read it for you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mataji. It was so beautiful. Today, I'd like to affirm that instead of seeking validation, approval, and such kind of trivial things from even those who are really close to us, I would like to I would like to beg Krishna to give me the strength to think about him in all circumstances and try my best to do whatever I'm doing for his pleasure alone. So that as you were saying, Mataji, may the plan that Krishna has for me be fulfilled, so that I act according to the plan that he has for me instead of acting against it by choosing all these kind of lower things. So that is what I would like to affirm today. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. I really love the way you do the reading, Taruni Radha. Thank you for your affirmations. Beautiful.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. I was seeking to. I was feeling these desires of needing validation again. It was similar actually, and wanting to belong to something, belong to some community or belong to some group. The feeling of belonging. I was craving for these emotions, and then I felt I'm doing it in a wrong place because it's like. It's like someone who is suffering in the hospital. They're expecting cure from another patient, and so I immediately want to turn. I mean, even in that moment, I turned towards Krishna um and laughed at my foolishness. And I want to depend on Krishna. I want to take shelter from these feelings of seeking belongingness, validation, and love in wrong places. These desires are there. They are not in my control. They just pop up. I want to take shelter from such desires. I helplessly want to take shelter from such desires to Krishna by coming to you, Krishna. Please give me shelter from this wrong desires. Hare Krishna. This is my affirmation. Hare Krishna.
Right. Yeah. Very thoughtful meditation. Thank you, Vilas Manjari.
Hare Krishna. My ideals inspire and energize me, and they dictate my future. I move forward unaffected by my past mistakes, sins, traumas, and I take shelter of the Supreme Lord to guide me, to love me. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Jai. May the Lord empower you.
Yes.
Always think about him. Thank you so much, Mrs. Anyone else? Okay, so let's wish for everybody to be given the intelligence, the devotion to think about Krishna in all circumstances. And may our thoughts flow towards Krishna. And may Krishna's will and not ours be done.